I never expected a millionaire CEO to find love in a street vendor's fried egg. The scent was intoxicating. Street corners alive with sizzling sounds, vibrant colors, and a chaotic energy pulsing through the air. I will never forget the day everything fell apart. I stood there, tears in my eyes, my hands trembling like leaves caught in a storm. My heart pounded. I was lost that a crowd gathered around the stall, the steam rising like a siren's call. His name was Jack. A millionaire with a perfectly polished suit, hair slicked back, and eyes that seemed to see through everything. He looked completely out of place like a diamond in a bed of pebbles. But there he was, captivated by something so simple, a fried egg nestled in a freshly baked bun that I could see the way he leaned closer, the way his breath caught as he took in the smell. The vendor, a wiry old man with a weathered face and calloused hands, grinned knowingly, flipping the egg into the oil with a delicate confidence. It crackled, the noise sharp and bright, slicing through the murmurs around us. And in that moment, I caught his eye. Jack turned, and our gazes locked. Suddenly, the world fell silent. The people around us faded away. It was just me, the sizzling egg, and Jack. One heartbeat. 2. My pulse raced. What was this strange connection? Why was I feeling this way over a man who had everything, someone who could drown in luxury while I struggled with food stamps? I tore my gaze away, focusing instead on the chaotic dance of the vendor. Every flip of the wrinkled wrist sent sparks flying, pieces of my heart unraveling. The vendor laughed loudly, celebrating his culinary masterpiece, a raucous sound that pulled the crowd back to life. But all I could hear was the low thrum of tension in the air. Then it happened. The stall collapsed under the weight of those who pressed close, metal clanging, wood splintering. I gasped, my body moving on instinct. I reached out, me hand brushing against Jack's arm. In that split second, I felt the heat radiate from him, a warmth that ignited something deep within me. Watch out! I screamed, pulling him back just in time. But as he stumbled, his elbow smashed into a tray of eggs, the yolks bursting like tiny suns, creating a chaotic mess on the pavement. Gasps erupted. Disbelief painted across faces. This collision about to create ripples far beyond a mere street vendor's scene. His expression morphed into confusion, horror, and something I couldn't quite name. I felt the tightness in my chest again. What had just happened? Who was he really? And what connection could form between a woman like me and a man like him? I stood frozen, heart racing, the crowd now tense with anticipation. Jack wiped the yolk from his cheek, his gaze intense. He didn't look away. But I felt the world crashing down. What if we were just fantasies waiting to shatter? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The cacophony faded into an uneasy silence as I met Jack's eyes. The crowd buzzed with uncertainty, murmurs flitting through the air like startled birds. In that moment, embarrassment surged through me like a flame. I could still feel the heat of his skin, the strength in his lean frame as I had pulled him back from disaster. But what had I saved him from? This was no ordinary misstep. I felt the weight of our worlds colliding, a disconnect as vast as the ocean. As he wiped the gooey mess off his face, a soft laugh escaped his lips, breaking the heavy atmosphere that had wrapped us in a tense grip. A strange light ignited in his eyes, and I wondered what he was thinking. Did my bravado impress him, or was he simply entertained by the surreal turn of events? I forced a smile, wishing to cloak my inner turmoil, but the laughter around us felt mocking in contrast to the bitter realization that coursed through me. My reality was stained in shades of struggle, while his was painted in luxury. I watched as he leaned down to help the old vendor gather fallen eggs, his fingers deft and gentle. In that moment, he transformed into something more profound and unexpected hero, not just with wealth but with kindness. The vendor's face broke into a toothy grin, his initial shock melting away as he jabbered in a thick accent, thanking Jack profusely. And I felt a flicker of something deep inside me, a hope that maybe, just maybe, there were bridges that could be built across the chasms of our lives. But then reality crashed back. Jack straightened, his eyes seeking mine again, and the moment turned heavier. "Are you okay?" he asked, his voice warm but laced with concern. "I didn't mean to cause such a scene, just a bit of shock," I replied, my voice shaky. My heart raced. They were the words of someone trying to brush past a feeling, trying to cover the raw, open wound of vulnerability with a bandage too small. How could I open up about the real chaos in my life when I had barely grasped my own emotions? The murmurs around us grew again, but I felt as though we stood at the edge of a canyon, teetering on the brink. A rift between us that I could neither fathom nor ignore. The vendor placed a hand on Jack's shoulder, gratitude pouring out of him as he invited him to come back anytime. I could see how my crisis had morphed into a moment of connection, a moment that felt fleeting, transparent, hovering in the ether like fragile bubbles. At that instant, there was a soft touch against my arm. I turned to see a woman, her eyes bright and alive. She was older, silver streaks in her hair, and a warmth radiated from her smile. "You two seem to have quite the encounter," she said, her voice wise and welcoming. "Don't let the chaos dampen what this could mean." That I felt an unexpected surge of gratitude for her kindness, yet it clashed with my swirling emotions. Could I really cling to hope when his life was riddled with affluence while mine was a continuous battle for survival? "Thank you," I breathed, but my voice faltered, the weight of the moment nearly too much to bear. The woman nodded knowingly, as if she could read the unspoken fears clinging to my heart. Before Jack could respond further, the commotion drew our attention again as the crowd erupted into laughter. His friends had arrived, faces painted with playful amusement, unaware of the tension that had just unfolded. Their voices were loud, cutting through the warmth we had begun to share. "Hey, Jack. What happened here?" one shouted, eyes alight with mischief. Jack turned, smile fading slightly as if realizing he was indeed still gridlocked in his world, a world I had only glimpsed in vibrant colors and muted shadows. My heart sank as I saw the distance creep back into his gaze, the reality of his life drawing him away like a tide. "Just a little accident," he replied, eyes darting towards me, filled with fleeting uncertainty. As they approached, I instinctively took a step back, my hand brushing against a fresh, warm tray of fried eggs, the remnants of a moment that had started to feel impossibly fragile. Jack's friends broke into uproarious laughter, pulling him into their world as I stood off to the side, a ghost haunting the edges of something beautiful and terrifying. But as they ushered him away, I locked eyes with Jack once more, a silent plea painted on my face. Would this be the end of our connection, merely an anecdote in a bustling life story far removed from my own? Then, the unexpected happened. Jack hesitated, caught between two worlds. He stepped away from the banter for just a second longer and called out to me, "I'd like to see you again." The weight of his words surged through me, charged with both potential and dread. But before I could respond, the laughter spiraled around us, swallowing our moment whole. Just like that, the canyon deepened, and I was left standing amidst the chaos, heart pounding against the cages of my own doubts. Would this be another fleeting moment I'd have to cherish alone, like a soft raindrop on a sunburnt day? And as I tried to process what had just happened, the world continued to whirl around me, leaving only the lingering warmth of our nearly formed connection, the fragile promise of more to come hanging in the air, pregnant with uncertainty. Would I ever find the courage to bridge the gap, or was this a mirage that had already begun to fade? The crowd dissipated, leaving behind shards of laughter and remnants of conversations buzzing like bees in my ears. My heart, still thrumming from Jack's imminent departure, felt heavy with unsaid words. I stood there, anchored to the ground, the warmth of his promise still enveloping me, but the reality cold and unyielding began to sting. That I turned to the vendor, who was busily tidying up the wreckage of the scene. "Are you okay?" I managed to ask, hoping to divert some of this turmoil away from my own heart. "Ah, my dear," he exclaimed, waving a hand dismissively, his jovial demeanor unwavering. Nothing but an egg or two lost. There will always be more. Like life, sometimes we drop, sometimes we crack, but the sun will always rise again. His words wrapped around me, an oddly comforting blanket amidst my swirling emotions. I forced a smile, as gratitude bubbled within me. This man, despite the chaos that had just unfolded, was a beacon of hope. But as I turned to him, wanting to express my genuine appreciation for his resilience, I caught sight of the patrons lining up again, eager for their breakfast. Another day of survival in a city that seldom paused to acknowledge the struggles of those like me. Thank you, I repeated softly, looking him in the eyes. For handling that so well. I hope I didn't make things worse. You were a shining knight today. He chuckled, and for a moment, my heart swelled with warmth, a brief escape from the reality outside our bubble. But tell me, dear girl, what is your name? Reina, I replied, a shy smile threatening to emerge. Reina, he echoed, marveling at my name as if he were tasting a fine wine. It fits you well. You have the light of a spring sunrise. Remember that when you faced the shadows of your day. That I took a breath, the weight of his kindness pooling in my chest. There it was, again, a flicker of hope that seemed so strange and foreign. I will, I said softly, buoyed by the notion that maybe, just maybe, there was more waiting for me beyond the constraining walls I built around my heart. Feeling emboldened, I stepped closer to the stall, a shadow of Jack's presence still lingering in my mind. He'll come back, I promised the vendor, my voice gaining strength. I want to help, to make sure you don't have to face chaos alone. That he beamed at me, the expression contagious enough to dissolve my lingering doubts momentarily, and we slipped into an easy conversation about the best ways to prepare eggs, a lesson I never knew I needed. As we chatted, I felt my heart lighten. Perhaps moments of connection didn't always have to be grand gestures. Sometimes, they could blossom in quaint exchanges, in unexpected kindness. But even as I thrived in this newfound trust, a gnawing anxiety trailed behind me like a shadow. I needed to face the world, to confront the truth of my circumstances. With every shared chuckle, the growing weight of my responsibilities loomed larger, darker. Rent was due, bills were piling up, and the time I took away from hustling could nibble away at the little power I had left. As the vendor waved me goodbye, his laughter still echoing in my ears, I turned once more to the thrumming heart of the market, the kaleidoscope of colors and sounds fading into a distant memory. Just when I thought I could embody the spirit of hopefulness, I felt my phone buzz in my pocket, its harsh vibration yanking me back to reality. Pulling it out, I saw my landlord's name flare across the screen. My stomach dropped. I pressed the answer button, each ring feeling like it might trigger a countdown to disaster. Reina. His voice boomed through the line, and I couldn't help but brace myself. We need to talk. It's about the rent. The confidence I had barely earned threatened to flee as I swallowed hard. I'm just a little behind right now, I started, but he cut me off. Just a little. You have 3 weeks past due. This isn't a game. I need you to pay up or. His voice trailed off, leaving a painful silence that echoed in my ear. He'll make arrangements, I promised, trying to inject a quiver of hope into my voice. Hope that now felt slippery. And fragile. Reina, talk is cheap. If I don't see payment soon, he'll have no choice but to take notes of your late fees or start looking for someone else. The silence after his words pressed against my chest like a vice, squeezing any remnants of hope I had salvaged during my brief time with the vendor. I felt exposed and empty, the wind rushing from my sails. I understand, I whispered, fear twisting my features. Hanging up, the world around me blurred, the sights and sounds morphing into an indistinct mess. I leaned against a vendor's cart, seeking solace in the irony of my hopes tethered to dreams far removed from my reality. Just then, from the corner of my vision, I spotted a figure weaving through the crowd. There, nestled in the chaos, was Jack, his laughter infectious, but he appeared to be also wrapped in the comfort of companionship, his friends surrounding him, eyes bright and carefree, and just when I thought I could breathe again, I noticed something he was holding. A small, neatly wrapped package, the edges tied with a delicate piece of twine. In that moment, dread washed over me like a cold wave. Why did it feel like that package was meant for me, a bridge across the chasm we had barely begun to traverse? As he turned to join his friends, a knot tightened in my chest, the fragile fabric of our connection straining dangerously on the brink of unraveling. The depths of uncertainty loomed around me, dragging me back toward the shadows. Would I have to watch him slip away, just as I had watched hope elude me time and again? I steeled myself to not show any reaction, but inside, a tempest was brewing that and that swirling universe of chaos and unfulfilled desires. I caught a glimpse of Jack looking back over his shoulder, just once, as if sensing the shift, sensing me, and for one fleeting moment, I could have sworn I saw concern cross his features. Then he vanished into the crowd, leaving me clutching the tattered threads of hope, aching yet again for connection, uncertain of where this tide would take me, dangerously close to drowning. The air thickened with anticipation as I stood still, straining to catch another glimpse of Jack, but the throngs of people in the marketplace swallowed him whole. The sting of inadequacy settled deep within me, mingling with the bitterness of my financial struggles. I blinked back, the moisture collecting in my eyes, fueling my resolve to face the day ahead. I turned away from the market, reluctantly leaving behind the warmth of unexpected kindness and the flicker of hope it promised. As I made my way home, the streets blurred into a cacophony of sounds, each step heavy with the weight of responsibility. My mind replayed the conversation with my landlord, the impossible ultimatum ringing in my ears. It echoed unrelentingly, reminding me that I was teetering precariously on the edge of an abyss. I had lost myself in the fleeting moments of joy, forgetting the reality that loomed just outside my reach. My phone buzzed again, and I flinched at the sight of a message from my mother. I know things might be tough right now, but remember, you are strong. Always here for you. I could almost hear her voice, tender yet firm, the woman who had weathered storms of her own. Despite everything, the message allowed a fragile grin to break through my somber facade. My heart warmed momentarily, but the weight of my present lingered, reminding me that I was still fighting my battles alone. Upon reaching my apartment, a place that felt like a never-ending cycle of suffocating walls, I sank onto a chair, staring at the peeling paint and flickering light overhead. My fingers shuffled through my stack of bills, each one feeling like a hand clenching tighter around my throat. They were tangible reminders of the past, of choices made, of stubbornness that now cost me dearly. My gaze fell on a note that had been buried underneath a faded flyer for a local art auction, written in bold letters about a prize for upcoming artists. A spark ignited within me. I could use my art to bring in extra income, to funnel my despair into something productive. But it was just a flicker, my doubts quickly extinguishing the blaze of inspiration. Could I truly contribute anything worth seeing amidst a sea of well-established artists? The shadows of insecurity closed in around me, gathering strength, suffocating my ambition. That I stood up abruptly, shaking my head to clear it of negativity, when a sudden loud knock on my door startled me. My heart raced. Who could it be? I approached cautiously, every instinct told me to brace for bad news. Who is it? I called out, hoping it wasn't another reminder of my mounting problems. Raina. It's me. Jack. The voice boomed through the wood, leaving me stunned. My mind raced back to that moment in the market, when I had seen him with that package. My heart fluttered erratically at the thought. Just a second. I fumbled with the door, almost tripping over my own hesitation, but I finally swung it open to reveal Jack, simplistic charm personified, standing there with a sheepish grin and that small package from earlier clutched tightly in his hand. Hey, he said, eyes sparkling despite the weight I felt pressing on my heart. I thought I'd check in. Are you okay? Yeah, of course, I responded, my tone more defensive than I intended. His worry struck me like a lightning bolt, electrifying those stifled walls I'd rather keep intact. Really? He tilted his head in skepticism, and in that moment, I felt like he could read every fear carved on my soul. I saw you in the market, and you looked tired. I bit my lip, the urge to cry catching in my throat. It's nothing I can't handle, I managed, even as my thoughts spiraled into darker territories. Compartmentalizing was becoming a normalization I was terrified to embrace. Raina, I know when someone needs help, he replied, his voice steady and filled with genuine concern. Let me in. before I could respond, he stepped into the threshold, cradling that small package as if it were a secret he had been dying to share. The scent of fresh citrus wafted through the air, mingling with nostalgia and the chance meeting. "Of our divergent worlds that I wanted to bring you this," he said, offering the parcel. "It's not much, but I thought you could use a little brightness." I blinked at it, feeling the weight of my pride pressing against my chest even as my heart ached to open it. What if I was pushing him away, sealing my fate with every moment of resistance? What if he was magnanimous in ways I could never repay? I hesitated, my fingers hovering over the twine before I took a deep breath, unraveling it with thoughts of kindness that threatened to undo me. As I opened the package, bright orange and golden hues spilled out, the most beautiful oranges I had ever seen, almost lustrous, their scent saturating the air. "They're from a local farm. I thought you might like them," he explained sheepishly. "They always remind me that even in the toughest times, something sweet can come from a bit of sunshine." That I held the oranges close to my chest, overwhelmed by the gesture. "Jack, this is it's beautiful." His smile beamed brighter than all the sunrises ever combined, but the fear that lingered quietly behind that warmth set insidious roots in my heart. "But I can't accept this, not when I can't even pay my own bills," I confessed, the shame bubbling to the surface, puncturing the moment. "What you need isn't what you can pay for, it's connection. Don't let pride pull you down." I could see the earnestness in his eyes, an unspoken understanding blossoming between us. But just as I began to feel the weight of our connection shift towards something hopeful, my phone buzzed again, startling us both. It was a notification from my bank, a harsh reminder of harsh realities. I flinched as I glanced at my balance and cringed inwardly. Jack's gaze followed mine, and the moment stretched taut between us. So much was unsaid, so many questions hung in the air, heavy with the threshold of change. "What's wrong?" he pressed, concern etching his brow as he stepped closer, bridging the distance that felt impossibly wide. I opened my mouth to feign nonchalance but faltered, my heart clutching at possibilities that were too risky to articulate, too frightening to put forth. Instead, I shoved the phone away, returned my attention to the oranges in my hands, tiny droplets of joy promising sweetness in the darkest of moments but always seen through the lens of my reality, and as I met his gaze, something shifted, a realization dawning, flickering at the edges of our connection, like a candle at the mercy of a storm. As his eyes searched mine, waiting for a leap of vulnerability, I knew that the fragility of hope lay before us. Would I gamble it all on the chance of a connection that might shatter? "Reina," he whispered softly, reaching for my hand, "don't close the door on something beautiful." The warmth of his touch sent jolts of conflicting emotions through me, and in that humming silence, it felt as though 1,000 paths lay before us, each one steeped in uncertainty yet bursting with promise. I had a choice, and standing there intertwined with Jack, was the first glimmering step into not just risking connection, but perhaps embracing the kind of love that found a way to thrive amid adversity. But as I opened my mouth as if guided by something beyond my control, a loud bang echoed through the corridor outside our apartment. A shout followed, low and threatening, and everything shifted once more. I turned instinctively to Jack, panic tightening my throat. What had we stepped into? Behind us, the chaos of our present moment became a tidal wave, crashing against the shores of our vulnerability. Would hope carry us through the storm, or would it be swept away in the chaos of the unknown? The atmosphere in the apartment shifted as the echo of the disturbance outside crashed over us like a tidal wave. I gripped the oranges tightly, feeling their firm skin press into my palms, and that warmth I had briefly found with Jack faltered, replaced by trepidation. "What was that?" I asked, my voice a whisper, barely steady enough to escape my lips. Jack's expression shifted, turning grave. The carefree demeanor from moments before had evaporated. "That I don't know," he replied, his gaze darting toward the door. "Let me check." He moved past me, the weight of uncertainty casting shadows across his usually bright demeanor. I felt suddenly alone, my heart pounding in rhythm with confusion and fear. It was as if time had paused, each second stretching into eternity as Jack pressed his ear to the door, straining to listen. Then, another shout rang out, this one sharper, more visceral. The words were muffled, but the threat was palpable. Something deep in my gut twisted, a primal instinct to protect myself surging to life. I was afraid of what lay beyond the fragile walls of my apartment, afraid of whatever chaos that turbulent sound heralded. "Stay back," Jack murmured over his shoulder, pulling the door open ever so slightly. With one swift movement, he slipped outside and closed the door behind him, leaving me alone with the distant clamor of panic. Each breath became a conscious effort as anxiety wove itself into every fiber of my being. I found myself pacing the small confines of my apartment, a feeling of isolation settling heavily upon me. The oranges remained cradled in my hands, a reminder of the soft moment we shared just moments before. I waited, each beat of silence stretching longer than the last, the fear festering like an unwelcome spider in the corner of my mind. My thoughts darted between the source of that raucous commotion and wherever Jack had meant to venture. What was he facing? What awaited us both outside this fragile cocoon? After what felt like an eternity, Jack returned, his face a mix of anger and concern. The energy in the room shifted once again, no longer illuminated by the warmth of kindness but now clouded with urgency. There was a fight outside, a couple of guys screaming at each other. "It looks tense, but it's mostly a group gathered around to watch," he explained, glancing over his shoulder, his brows still furrowed. "I don't think it's safe for you to go out right now." My breath hitched as I processed his words. The world outside seemed to pulse with uncertainty and violence, contrasting so sharply with the brief moment of comfort we had shared. "What do we do?" I asked, my pulse racing as I leaned against the wall for support. The walls felt as though they were closing in around me. Jack stepped closer, cups of air swirling between us. "We wait. Until it calms down," he replied, his hand beckoning me forward. "It's the best choice. But we should keep the lights low, just in case." Nodding almost unconsciously, I followed him into the dim light of the cramped kitchen, where the flickering bulb barely cast any glow. He took a seat at the small table, dragging a chair close for me to join him. For a fleeting moment, I felt safe, even amid the chaos that threatened to spill into our lives. "That I am sorry for barging in like that," Jack said, the honesty in his voice breaking through the tension. "I didn't mean to trigger any feelings you weren't ready for." That I shook my head, the vulnerability slowly seeping in, fighting against the prickly bramble of fear that surrounded me. "No, I wanted you here." My voice trembled. I don't want to get swept away in something I can't control." "You're in control of more than you think," he remarked, but the weight of the words lingered heavily. "This fight, this chow-sit doesn't define you or us." That I wanted to believe him. Yet even as he spoke, memories of my struggles loomed larger. The mounting bills, the uncertainty. I wrestled with the notion that I was tied to a reality that seemed adamant to keep me low. Another shout reverberated through the street, and I flinched instinctively, my heart racing, fear threading through the hollow abyss inside me. Jack's eyes found mine, reading the turmoil spreading like ink across parchment. "Should I call someone?" I asked, knowingly, my purpose lost to chaos. "No, it's not that serious. Just people being loud and upset. You're safe here with me, Reina." He reached across the table, taking my hand gently in his warm grasp, grounding me against the tide of anxiety crashing around us. But just as I began to find solace in his presence, a loud crash rang out, a cacophony of glass breaking echoing through the corridor. The fear I battled splintered into an urgent panic, and my heart dropped. "What was that?" I gasped, adrenaline triggering every instinct to flee. Jack's grip tightened, transformative strength radiating from him. "Stay," he commanded gently, rising to reassess the door yet again. My mind swirled. Would the chaos follow us, dissolving the fragile connection we had begun to build? I could feel a part of me teetering, poised on a precipice that threatened to engulf all that we had lightly woven together. Then, as he turned the knob, a voice intruded, unexpectedly low yet commanding. "Jack, we need you." A friend of his, someone I vaguely recognized from the edges of Jack's life before this moment, tension spilling from his frame, hurried eyes roaming the apartment as he observed the unsettling atmosphere. "There's trouble down the street, things are escalating fast. We need to help." Rising dread pooled heavily in my stomach, and I caught Jack's searching look. "You can't go out there," I exclaimed, a rush of urgency spilling from my lips. "Reina, "It's my responsibility," he replied, the determination stout yet unmistakable worry lurked beneath the surface. "It's just a situation, it can be resolved. I can't walk away." Yet fear coiled tighter inside as I felt our universe divide before my eyes. He was ready to leap into uncertainty, while I stood rooted in a different kind of chaos. Would I let him go outside, where danger loomed like a shadow? Every fiber of my being screamed for him to stay, but the reality hung ominously in the air. This was an opportunity for him to reclaim purpose, while I felt the walls of my own world closing around me. "I'll be right back," he promised, squeezing my hand firmly. "Stay by the door and keep the lights off. I'll follow the group, I'll be careful." As he stepped toward the door, a chasm yawned between USA world laden with uncertainty and fear overshadowing what flicker of light had just begun to bloom. With a final glance back, he disappeared through the door, taking with him a piece of the fragile hope we had shared. Left in the dark, doubt wrapped its fingers around my heart, squeezing tighter until I could hardly breathe. What awaited us on the other side of my boundaries? Would this be the moment that forever altered the course of our connection, thrusting us deeper into a tempest we could neither foresee nor comprehend? The chaos outside swelled, melding fear and hope into a crucible of emotions that twisted like a storm. I found myself standing at the threshold of my own reluctance, ready to break open, or to remain sealed in silence as uncertainty unfolded around me. The eerie calm enveloped me after Jack had left the apartment, wrapping around me like a shroud. I moved cautiously to the window, peering through the dusty glass, fingers trembling as I strained to see through the chaos spilling into the streets below. The flickering streetlight failed to pierce the escalating darkness outside. Shadows danced like restless spirits, swirling with the painful echoes of shouting, and I felt the sting of lost moments like thorns in my heart that I forced myself to breathe, but every inhale tasted bitter, laced with the concern of Jack's unwavering resolve and the nagging dread that gripped my mind. Panic clawed up from the pit of my stomach. I wished to be brave, to confront the chaos like Jack did, but the thought of losing him sent torment through me like wildfire. Switching on my phone, I sent Jack a quick message: "Please be careful." I knew the street was no place for hope, yet I maintained a fragile thread of belief, praying that he would return unscathed. Silence enveloped me again, harsh and oppressive, an endless void stretching in the absence of action. Finally, I sank onto the couch, hands trembling over my knees, wrestling with the reality that this fear was an inescapable part of my life. My mind replayed the moments with Jack, the laughter, the warmth of his touch, how effortlessly he seemed to fit into the spaces of my solitude. I craved a return to that light, but now darkness loomed with ferocity. Unexpectedly, a soft knock broke the heavy silence. I startled upright, heart racing as I glanced toward the door. Not his could not be Jack returning already. He couldn't have ventured back, the atmosphere was still electric and fraught. Tentatively, I approached, my instincts screaming at me to stay put. But curiosity lured me closer. Peeking through the peephole, I was met with the silhouette of a familiar figure. The neighbor, Lucy, a sweet woman with a penchant for avocado toast and friendly words. I hesitated, gnawing at my growing worry, but I finally opened the door a crack. "Lucy," I exhaled, relief flooding my lungs. "What are you doing here?" Her expression was clouded with worry, eyes scanning my face. "I heard the commotion and thought you might need someone to check on you." "Is Jack here?" I shook my head, biting my lip to hold back a surge of emotion. "He went out to help. There's been a fight." "Oh no," she gasped, placing a gentle hand on my arm reassuringly. "Don't worry, he'll be fine. He's strong and resourceful. But you shouldn't be alone right now." There was solace in her presence, and it settled like a warm blanket against my skin, sailing me into calmer waters for a brief moment. We settled at the table, where I recounted the tumultuous events, Lucy listening intently, offering nods and soft reassurances, her kindness enveloping me like a balm to my frayed spirit. As we spoke, I could feel my heart slowly settling, the fears and uncertainties shrinking against the warmth of her empathy. "Sometimes," Lucy offered gently, "we have to trust people to take care of things, even if it's hard." "Have you ever faced something like this?" I asked, the weight of my question lingering. She nodded, an understandable sorrow flitting across her features. Once, my brother was in a situation where he got in over his head. I felt helpless, but you know what? After a while, he found his way out. We all do our best. Her story sparked something in me, hope, perhaps. Perhaps honesty and vulnerability became radiant threads of connection in our shared experience. We spoke of resilience, how the storms we weathered shaped us, nudging me towards the light. Time meandered on as we bonded, laughter threading through our conversation, casting shadows of worry into the corners. But my heart began to twist again as whispers of uncertainty returned under the thrum of our words. Was I clinging to these moments, feeling safe, as Jack faced whatever turmoil awaited him? The sudden vibration of my phone cut through my thoughts. Flushing with urgency, I picked it up, breath hitching as I saw Jack's name light up the screen. I opened the message, anticipation thrumming in my pulse. Need to talk. Something's happened. What is it? Lucy peered over my shoulder, concern thick in the air as I read the text for a second time. A gnawing dread pooled in my stomach. Something had shifted, and I could feel it, an undertow of worry dragging me under. I don't know, I stammered, contemplating whether to call him back, my heart oscillating between fear and dread. It sounds serious, call him, Lucy urged softly. Her voice was steady, wrapping around my growing panic. You deserve to know, but hesitation bathed me. Had if the truth was something I couldn't bear? What if the chaos outside had crept into our small sanctuary and twisted it into something unrecognizable? As I wrestled with my phone, caught between uncertainty and fear, I heard a sound from outside the door, a commotion escalating again, the distant rumble of angry voices mingling with shouts as a heavy dread hunkered down in my chest. Raina, please, Lucy urged, concern etching deeper lines in her brow. You need to know that. I took a deep breath, steeling myself against the spiraling edges of my mind. I hit dial, hoping for the best, but bracing for whatever storm might follow as I pressed my phone against my ear. Jack. I whispered as the line rang. Would this call soothe the fear circling me like a predator, or would it expand my worries into overwhelming dimensions? Just as the line connected, a loud crash erupted somewhere in the building, a singular sound that chilled my blood. My pulse raced, heart pounding in my ears as Jack's voice came through, calm yet awash in tension. Raina, the line crackled, but in that moment, everything shifted. From the doorway, an intruder burst through, a stranger cloaked in shadows, eyes glinting with intent. And before I could comprehend what was happening, it all unraveled into chaos. The fragile security I had just begun to rebuild shattered before my very eyes. In that moment, I understood, the ground beneath me shifting, uncertain footing crumbling as reality wove itself into a tapestry far darker than I could have ever anticipated. Panic ignited within me as the door swung open with an explosive force. My heart screamed to bolt, to run, but my feet remained glued to the floor. The dim light barely illuminated the figure before me, casting long shadows that twisted unnaturally across the room. Raina. Jack's voice bled through the line, urgency fueling every syllable. Get out. Someone's. The intruder surged forward, and I let out a startled gasp, finally breaking free from my paralysis, instinct guiding me toward the kitchen. I stumbled, the world tilting around me like a nightmarish carousel. Lucy darted past, her quick reflexes better than my own. She shoved a chair in front of the figure, creating a brief barrier between danger and my trembling frame. The chaos spiraled into a cacophony, the sound of the chair scraping against the hardwood mingled with Jack's frantic shouts, pulsing through my mind like a drumbeat of dread. Raina, please, talk to me. I wrapped my fingers tighter around the phone, feeling the warmth emanate from it, a connection to the outside world, a tether to reality. Jack. I shouted back, fear choking my voice. What's happening? Stay away from the door. There's someone. The figure lunged forward, and I let out a breathless scream. I could feel Lucy's cold resolve as she grabbed my arm, her strength anchoring me. She glanced back at me, her eyes wide, yet unusually calm. We need to move, she whispered, her voice intense but steady. Get to the bedroom, now. Another crash echoed in the hallway as Jack's voice filled the air again. Raina, listen to her. It's dangerous. The tension surged through each word, and suddenly, reality crested like a wave before crashing down. I darted past Lucy, surrendering to instinct, propelling myself through the archway into the bedroom, my heart racing as fear transformed into a wild adrenaline. "Jack!" I yelled again, hoping somehow my voice could bridge the distance between us, hoping against hope that he was safe out there. The sound of fabric tearing and grunts echoed through the walls. I cringed, the uncertain plight he faced twisting my gut into tighter knots. "Stay put," Lucy commanded, pushing the bedroom door closed but leaving enough of an opening to observe the madness that unfolded just outside. I pressed my back against the wall, my body quaking, and held my breath, praying. From behind the door, I could see movement. The intruder wrestled with Lucy, the two locked in a fierce struggle. I quivered, torn between desperation and helplessness. Somewhere in my mind flickered the image of Jack, brave and unyielding in the face of danger. Did he think of me as the world around him crumbled? "Raina!" Jack's voice roared again, and I felt his determination thrumming through the air, electrifying the moment. "Get to the window. Look for help." I turned, my heart thrumming louder as I grabbed the curtain. I peeled it back, fingers fumbling. The streetlights flickered ominously below, casting disjointed shadows over the chaos lurking outside. "Jack, I see," I stuttered, voice trembling as I took stock of the scene. A group of figures surged in the street below, their anger crackling like static. I caught sight of a police car, lights flashing, but it seemed tense and distant, like a fragile hope caught in a swirling storm. Suddenly, a resounding crash rippled through the air, causing me to jerk back. The bedroom door creaked open wider, and Lucy, disheveled but fierce, barreled through, her eyes wild. "They're coming!" she gasped, breathing heavily. "We have to go, Raina, Jack needs me!" I yelled, feeling a desperation unfurling like a wildflower under pressure. "I can't leave him, Raina." She tugged at my arm, urging me away from the window. "He's holding his own, but we can't stay here." The sound of footsteps echoed dangerously close, growing louder with every passing second. My heart hitched in my throat as I clung to the hope that Jack would find a way back to me. I wanted to tell him I loved him, that no matter what faced us, we were stronger together. The last sound was a splintering crack, splintering my thoughts and fears. And before I could process what was happening, an uninvited gust of cool air swept through the doorway, flinging the door open completely. There he was, Jack, standing at the edge of chaos, his eyes fierce with determination, adrenaline coursing through his veins. "Get behind me!" he barked, positioning himself before both Lucy and me as if he could shield us from the whirlwind of danger threatening to engulf us. That I in the split second that followed, everything spun. Jack's expression shifted from resolute to something darker, a shadow flitting across his brow as the figure who had intruded upon our sanctuary prepared to challenge him. "Stay back!" Jack shouted, voice trembling but fierce, but there was an uncertainty lingering in his stance that stung like salt in a wound. My heart sank as another piece of the unfolding truth slipped away from me, an unraveling thread of safety. In that moment, all the emotions swirled together, fear, hope, love, and the realization that our lives may never be the same again. And as Jack's fierce face emerged from shadows that threatened to consume us, I knew we stood on the edge of an upheaval we weren't prepared to face. And as the world lurched around me, I couldn't shake off the feeling something far worse was still waiting in the wings, just beyond our sight. The air froze as the tension electrified the room, a thick fog of dread wrapping around us as Jack stood guarding Lucy and me, protecting us from the encroaching storm. The intruder hovered just outside the door, breathing heavily, the sound clawing at my sanity. "Raina, listen to me." Jack's voice cut through the chaos. His fixed gaze bore into mine as if he were trying to pull me closer through sheer will. "You and Lucy need to get out of here. I'll handle this." Terror gripped my chest, a vice tightening as realization washed over me. They were coming for him, no, coming for us all. The stakes felt impossibly high, but I couldn't abandon him now. Not when moments like this turned love into the fiercest kind of courage. "Jack, I can't just leave you." My voice shook, mingling with the sound of footsteps reaching a fever pitch outside. We have to stick together, his brows knitted in frustration. I'm not asking, I'm telling. We can't risk. Before he could finish, the intruder rushed in a whirlwind of chaos, all rage and determination. Jack lunged forward, dodging a strike aimed at him, but my heart dropped as I realized they were engaged in a battle that could end everything we cherished. Lucy's mantra echoed in my mind, urging me to escape while I still could, while the storm of violence raged just outside our fragile bubble. Time seemed to draw taut, each second stretching into eternity. I could feel the weight of despair like an anchor dragging me down. But somehow, amidst the chaos, I remembered those little glimpses of light when Jack surprised me with his spontaneous kindness, or when he smiled down at me like I was the universe folded into one person. Those moments had illuminated dark corners of my life, but now, they felt like distant stars, fading fast in the wake of danger. Come on, Raina. We need to go. Lucy insisted, her voice cracking with urgency. She shot a desperate glance at the fight unfolding, fear coating her thoughts. Jack thrust the intruder against the wall, but I could see his energy waning, his body weaving slightly as he dodged another blow. Run! He shouted, each word strained, a plea wrapped in determination. A part of me fought against the urge to flee, longing to draw strength from his unwavering spirit. But another part understood if I didn't move now, we risked losing everything. Jack, I whispered, the words sticking to my throat like a stone. It was a lifeline I fought to cast in turbulent waters, but he didn't look back. His focus remained trained on the intruder, relentless in his fight, the ferocity of love propelling him forward as bruises blossomed across his skin. Raina, go. Jack's voice rose in intensity, and I felt the swell of pain in my chest. I tore my gaze from him, turning to mistake-stained bravery in Lucy's eyes, a fire igniting within me. Before I could hesitate, I grasped Lucy's hand, and we darted toward the window, my heart racing with every step. But just as I reached for the edge, I heard the sound that shattered my resolve, a swift, agonizing thud followed by a cry I'd never forget. Jack staggered back, his defenses crumbling as the intruder gained the upper hand. My blood ran cold, dread washing over me, but just as I thought I'd scream, Lucy pulled me deeper into the shadows. That we can't. I gasped, resisting her pull. Jack, look at him. Hell, push through. Lucy countered, urgency edged in her tone. That's when I noticed a glint of light reflecting off something in the intruder's hand. It was a gun. The reality of the situation ripped through me with the force of a tidal wave, crashing down upon my heart. This wasn't just a brawl anymore, this was survival. My breaths grew ragged as we edged back, my internal struggle spiraling, threatening to splinter and crack. Just moments before, I believed love was the most powerful thing we had, but now I questioned if it was enough. With shaky resolve, I turned my gaze back to Jack, whose focus was still unwavering, even as he reeled from impacts and the weight of impending danger drew near. Each second ticking by felt like hours, and the fear of our worst outcome clawed at me. Please, Jack, I whispered, hoping somehow my words could reach him, that love could transcend even this chaos. Suddenly, the world blurred, and a noise drew my attention back to the fight. The intruder lunged again, this time, changing direction. Toward us. Raina. Lucy. Jack shouted, breaking through the fray, his voice cutting like a beacon through darkness, but before I could react, the intruder twisted, forcing me and Lucy into a path of destruction, a storm we weren't prepared for. In that blink of an eye everything shifted. The world around us cascaded into chaos as I felt the desperate pull of fate twisting, leaving me teetering on the edge of the impossible. It was in that moment of freezing fear that the door broke open wide, shadows pouring in all at once. The realization hit me like a freight train, this wasn't just a battle anymore. Help had arrived, but who was standing among them sent a shiver racing down my spine, twisting everything I thought I knew. Madison. I gasped, disbelief clawing at my throat as my least favorite name turned into my greatest fear. Madison, Jack's former fiancée, stood there, a triumphant smile cutting through the chaos, a calculated glint in her eyes as if she had orchestrated this entire nightmare. With realization came a new wave of dread, a wave of betrayal pushing uphill, threatening to drown us all. And as the reality pulled me down into its depths, I knew it was just beginning, our lives entwined in a web of deception, and just like the shadows, far darker things loomed ahead, waiting for a chance to strike. Sparks ignited in the air, mingling with the chaos that spun wildly around me. Madison's presence was like pouring salt into fresh wounds, exposing raw emotions I had kept buried. She was a living embodiment of my greatest fears and shattered dreams, and every part of me recoiled at the sight of her. Jack, momentarily distracted, turned to face her, breathless and battered, his attention divided between the fight and the unexpected arrival of the woman who had once claimed his heart. I could see the nerves coiling in his body, reacting to the turmoil unraveling between us. "Madison, what are you doing here?" he demanded, the incredulity coloring his voice with disbelief. "Isn't it obvious?" she quipped, tossing her head back in a laugh that sent chills down my spine. "I'm saving you after all. There's only so much a street vendor can do against my connections." My heart raced as I grappled with her words, the implications sliding under my skin like venom. Connections? Was this all part of a twisted game she had set into motion, one that threatened to rip apart the fragile world we had built in these last few months? The intruder, momentarily taken aback by Madison's arrival, seized the opportunity to shift the focus back to Jack. With a vicious charge, he lunged towards him, and time fractured as I glimpsed a potential disaster unfurling before my eyes like fragile parchment. "Jack!" I screamed, instinctively moving towards him, feeling the urgency overtake my thoughts as every part of me wanted to protect him. "Raina, no!" His voice clashed with mine, an alarm pulling me back. Lucy, squeezed tight beside me, remained silent, her wide eyes darting between us, seemingly frozen in the face of this whirlwind of chaos. "What do we do?" she finally whispered, her voice trembling, yet it broke through the noise like a fragile lifeline. That moment forced everything into perspective for me. Jack was a fighter, but we couldn't depend solely on his strength. We needed to find a way out together, to leverage whatever advantage we had before it slipped through our fingers. "Stay close," I said, my voice barely above a whisper, a newfound resolve settling into my bones as I grabbed hold of Lucy's hand. We had to outsmart Madison and the intruder who so eagerly sought to take everything we had fought for. All while wrestling with the danger posed by a woman who had once been an integral part of Jack's life, one who had not just returned but turned our world upside down. Desperation fueled my next thought. "We need to flank him," I said quickly, pointing towards a narrow corridor that led away from the living room where this battle raged. "Follow me. We'll create a diversion." Jack's eyes met mine, a silent agreement flowing between us. He'd trusted me before, and in that moment, I knew we would have to earn that trust again, against Madison, against fate, against everything that bore down on us. As we moved swiftly through the shadows, I could hear the sounds of the struggle intensifying behind us. With every step, dread coiled tighter, overtaking the flickering hope of a way out. "What if?" Lucy began, but the look on my face silenced her. Now wasn't the time for more questions, only action. That we crept quietly, edging toward the back of the house, the tension thickening with every heartbeat. I could still hear snippets of muffled shouts between Madison and Jack, their voices rising and falling with urgency and disbelief. It sent rippling waves of fear through me. How far she would go to assert her claim over him? I hadn't been prepared for the way jealousy clawed at me, a bitter reminder of the emotional scars that still lingered. The pain twisted in my chest like a serrated knife, turning every memory of Jack into a double-edged sword. "Are you okay?" Lucy whispered, her voice laced with concern. "You seem." "I'm fine," I lied, but the tremor in my voice betrayed me. I wasn't fine. I was drowning in turmoil, caught between the ever-persistent shadows of the past and the love blossoming in the aftermath. Suddenly, the sounds of struggle escalated. A loud bang reverberated through the walls. My heart dropped, instinctively picturing Jack caught in the crossfire as he fought for his life. I couldn't allow myself to imagine the worst, yet the image lingered, refusing to dissipate as my fear took form. "Raina. Lucy." Jack's voice broke through, strained but somehow still holding on to its power. "That we need to help him," I insisted, taking a moment to compose myself while anger crystallized like ice water in my veins. We can't let Madison win. We can't let her take him from us. But as I turned to lead the way back into the battle, something strange caught my eye, a glimmer of hope shining through the dimly lit corridor ahead. My heart raced, the realization crashing upon me like waves upon a rocky shore. I had a chance to seize our fate, to forge an avenue that didn't exist before. Then a gut-wrenching scream shattered the air, slicing through the dim torrent of my thoughts like lightning. It was impossible to tell who had cried out, but it was enough to propel me forward into the fray, fear and determination intertwining in one reckless motion. Just as we entered the living room, shadows surged around, the chaos unfolding in every direction. But what I saw next chilled my very core. A figure lying on the ground, the breath knocked out of them, glistening crimson pooling on the floor. Jack! I screamed, but the sound faltered as Madison stepped forward from the shadows, a gleam of satisfaction shimmering in her eyes. "Looks like your street vendor had to learn the hard way," she sneered, her voice dripping with malice, as she pointed towards a slumped figure beside a broken vase. Both Lucy and I gasped, our hearts stopping. "Raina!" Jack's voice rang out, filled with raw panic and hurt. But all I could see was the frail figure before me, the truth of it all hitting with unforgiving clarity. Someone I had thought was safe, someone I had never expected to be caught up in this dark web of fate had fallen, and as the reality pressed down heavy, I felt the world around me curve and shift like grating gears, unraveling the truth, but too late to turn back, no way out but forward into the darkness that awaited us. Time stood still in the wake of that brutal revelation, as if the universe had held its breath, teetering on the edge of a precipice that threatened to swallow us whole. I stood there, paralyzed, the flicker of hope extinguished as I took in the sight of my mother, crumpled on the floor, her warm eyes dimmed. Confusion wrestled with despair, shattering every fragile notion of safety I had clung to since Jack had appeared in my life. "Raina!" Jack's voice shattered the haze as he rushed towards my mother, his fierce determination ignited with a relentless flame, fueled by anger and pain. "Get away from her!" Madison, at the center of this chaos, was unyielding. "It's too late," she hissed, that maddening grin stretching across her face. "You'll find that your little world can be turned inside out in a moment, Raina. He never belonged to you." I felt the icy tendrils of her words claw at my resolve. I shot forward, heart racing and adrenaline coursing through me, as fear wrestled with rage. "Get away from her!" I shouted, my voice cracking, but I refused to let weakness seep into my tone. I could still feel warmth wrapping around me. Bonds I'd forged with Jack were real, and Madison couldn't take that away from us. Jack knelt beside my mother, cradling her head in his hands as he assessed her injuries, his face a mask of urgency etched with worry. "Stay with me, okay? Don't close your eyes," he urged softly, his whispers tender and fierce against the chaos. I knew he was trying to reassure her, but it was panic that wove through his voice, a sound that sent shards of fear spiraling into my heart. I didn't know the depth of her injuries, but every moment stretched like taffy, pulling at my core, unraveling me thread by thread. "Raina!" He called again, urgency breaking through the tension. "Get Lucy and call for help. Now!" I darted away, distant but alert, and my fingers flew to my phone. In that moment, I couldn't see past the swirling darkness threatening to consume us. But I felt Lucy's presence beside me, bright as ever, cutting through the haze like a lighthouse in a storm. "What happened? Who did this?" she gasped, wide brown eyes darting toward the broken silhouette on the ground. "Madison," I snapped, a wave of venom gliding through my voice. "Shesh is here. We need to get my mother to safety." With trembling resolve, I pressed a few buttons, praying for a swift response, the aching reality of my life rushing back. It usually never were simple. But this was beyond anything I'd encountered, pushing me fully into the storm that had been brewing, ready to drown us all. "Help is coming," I breathed, squeezing Lucy's hand. "But let's get Jack and your family away from her." As I turned, Jack's hands grazed my mother's face, and the sight of worry etched deep into his features ignited something inside me, a fire rising from the ashes. "Raina, go. She needs help urgently. The fervor in his commands pierced through the haze. I drew courage from his unwavering spirit, from the dim light shining within me even as darkness encroached. I rushed to grab my mother's shoulders, feeling panic shoot through me. "Mom, can you hear me?" I whispered, tears welling in my eyes as I watched helplessly that a soft groan slipped past her lips, and though I caught the flicker of her eyelids, they did not meet my gaze. "Stay with us," I urged, feeling Lucy's grip tighten on my arm, anchoring me amidst the swirling maelstrom filled with chaos. Madison's laughter echoed eerily, a venomous sound that punctured the room, a haunting reminder of the stakes we faced. "It's futile, Raina. None of this changes your fate, you don't control this." Jack rose then, his body brimming with intensity as he positioned himself between us, every ounce of strength pouring from him, fierce as a storm. "You won't take her, Madison. Not when I'm here." The confrontation loomed heavily, a battle that spiraled beyond physicality. It was emotional, layered in past sins and tangled lives. Time raced recklessly forward, every heartbeat synchronizing with the swell of the moment as adrenaline surged through our bodies. I glanced back at my mom, heart clenching painfully in my chest. "I can't lose her," I whimpered, fear twisting my throat like a vice. Jack turned slightly, catching my frantic gaze. "We will get her out of this, I promise, Raina." And in those words was an anchor of promise, a flicker of hope lighting the darkest corners of despair. I tucked it deep inside like a treasure, knowing that whatever the outcome, we would stand together against whatever might follow, and then, as if summoned by sheer will, the door burst open. Emergency responders flocked in, their presence solidifying the fragile thread of safety I clung to. I felt a rush of relief wash over me, as Jack pivoted, ready to protect against whatever darkness lingered still within Madison. In that moment, chaos erupted anew, the room engulfed in frenzied motion. "Drop your weapon," the lead officer shouted, a thundering command that sent adrenaline surging through my veins. Jack took a step closer to me, shielding us from the chaos that threatened once more. Madison's expression faltered, that malicious glee momentarily replaced by something darker. "You think you can control everything, don't you?" With one swift movement, she lunged for Jack, but he dodged, bringing forth all the strength he could muster, a testament to his character surging through his veins. "Get her out of here," he shouted, voice laden with urgency, yet it broke slightly in urgency, a passion rippling with all the weight of our interconnected lives. Lucy and I edged backwards, gradually letting the first responders take control. "I've got this," Jack shouted, and for a moment, my heart hung still in the air, tethered between two worlds as I watched the fracture of fate unfold before us. Madison threw a punch, but Jack's resolve channeled into an incredible swing, pushing her back with raw strength as officers aimed at her with determined stares. "Raina! Go!" Jack barked, his voice cracking under the weight of the turmoil, and in that moment, I realized I had to make a choice: either step back and let this happen or to leap forward, believing that together we could overturn the tides. That I hesitated, my heart clanging against my ribs, but then I felt that thread of light tugging at me. I drew Lucy close, and together we leaped into action, hearts pounding in sync, moving swiftly toward my mom who still lay helplessly amidst the growing chaos as we ushered her toward safety. In that whirlwind of motion, there was bravery and power, energy forged on the anvil of love, and as we moved out of that chaos, with Jack and the officers inside grappling with the storm, I thought about how these moments would etch themselves into our lives, forever intertwining. We had been through hell, we teetered on the edge, but I had one foot in darkness and the other beginning to forge a path toward forgiveness, toward resilience. Mother and I fled towards the safety and the light, and a single thought anchored my chaotic mind: we would find our way back to one another, back together again to face the shadows, empowered and united. And in that pivoting moment, my world lit up once more, not just claiming what we had lost, but forging ahead into the light. A step toward courage, an embrace of our own truth, more powerful than betrayal, unearthing an acceptance that even in the shadows, love always finds a way. Jack's words echoed in my spirit as we ran. "Raina, trust yourself. You're more powerful than you think." And somehow, nestled within those wisdoms, I finally found the strength to believe in a future where my heart resided not just in the echoes of the past but in newfound loved ones steadfast and bright, waiting to shine through the darkest moments. After all, in the throes of tumult, love was the currency that would buy us hope and a renewal that we all so desperately craved. And as we struggled forward together, I knew that despite the darkness that threatened to consume there would always be light if we learned to embrace its warmth and fight for it fiercely. The last thing I saw was Jack, his fierce gaze locked onto mine, an unshakable resolve beneath chaos. As he too fought against the shadows, I understood how love ignited hope amid adversity, how together, we could rise above anything, arms entwined against the night, and as the dust settled, all of it like ashes filtering on the wind, I whispered a silent prayer, a determination to reclaim our truth and find the beautiful life we had longed for. In the labyrinths of uncertainty, amidst love's powerful embrace, I found a heartbeater's forever resonating, resolute and unwavering, against the storms that dared to shatter us both. Together, we survive, I whispered, knowing that through sheer will and love, we would reclaim our destiny inch by inch, setting the stage for a new narrative, brighter than our darkest fears. And as the night surrendered to dawn, a warm afternoon embraced us in its renewing light, illuminating the path ahead. My heart finally knew, the journey was just beginning,